Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome today's program, Suzie Holycross, who's Business Development Manager, DOT at Command Alkon. And today we're going to talk about e-Construction, the evolution toward a paperless environment. Now, here on Talking Logistics, we've talked a lot about how the construction industry historically has been a laggard when it came to digital transformation. But the tide is starting to turn as e-construction initiatives start to gain traction in the industry. What is e-construction? What factors are driving it? And how is technology playing a role in this trend? Well, those are some of the key questions we're going to address in today's episode. And it's great to have Suzie on the program to share her insights and perspective and advice on this topic. So, Suzie, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Adrian. I'm glad to be here.
So, Suzie, we've had some of your colleagues on Command Alkon here on the program over the past couple of years. You're a first-time guest, so like I always like to do, I'm always curious how people get into this industry to begin with. So, before we dive into this whole topic of e-construction, why don't you just tell us briefly a little bit about your career path, why you got involved with supply chain logistics, the construction industry, and what's your current role and responsibilities there at Command Alkon?
Okay. Well, I've been with Command Alkon a little over 8 years. I hired in as a technical writer, and over the years, my role evolved as I took on additional responsibilities and found things that I was more interested in. So I've been constantly changing since I've been here. I hired in with our mobile applications group. So I was working specifically with mobile applications, and that kind of led to my current role as the business development manager for DOT. Because as I talked to producers about our mobile products, I found a reoccurring theme was that every producer, no matter what state or what their size was, when I talked about using mobile applications and going to electronic ticketing, there was always concern with how it would be met with by the DOTs in their particular state. So I started investigating that path a little bit, and it eventually moved to where I'm at now, where it's a full-time role for me to kind of make sure that what we're doing is meeting the needs of the DOT as well as our producer and contractor partners.
Well, that's great. And certainly mobile technologies is something that is playing a big role across supply chain logistics, across all industries, and certainly have an impact there in the construction industry. But again, I think you brought up a great point, is that, particularly in construction, where you have the Department of Transportation, at the state level, then you've got obviously from a highway standpoint, from a federal level. I mean, aligning, what you're doing with, what's happening on the government side of things. It's critically important because you want to make sure that you're aligned, particularly because there's so much investment that DOTs, the investments that they make in construction. So let's get started now. I mean, let's just start with a basic question. I mean, what is e-construction and who is driving it and why?
Well, e-construction is a term I think that was coined to just kind of include all aspects of making construction projects paperless. Most states have been doing their bid documents electronically for years. This is largely driven by the Federal Highway Administration. As I said, as I started investigating, what different states were doing, it seemed they all had their own initiatives, and most of those were driven by the Federal Highway Administration. They had a program called Everyday Counts, and a large portion of that was to get states using more and more paperless initiatives on their project sites. And like I said, the bid documents have been electronic for quite some time, where they're putting the bids out. People read them, submit their contract documents for approval. So that part's been underway for quite a long time. As you move through the construction process, it seems like the last pieces of paper exchange on a job site are typically those material tickets that come in with a driver. So if you're a DOT inspector or any third-party person on the site, maybe the contractor, you're chasing trucks down trying to get a look at that ticket, And for DOT, the inspectors on the site, whether they're DOT employees or some states contract out those positions to do the testing on the site, not only do you have to find the truck, and make sure that, they got the ticket, but then you see them start kind of scrolling across that ticket, for concrete, air temperature, the slump, water cement ratios, all sorts of information they're just physically handwriting on the ticket. Now you're looking at job sites that are windy, they're dirty, sometimes it's raining, it's snowing. I mean, it's not a great work environment to be handling paper. And so, the Everyday Counts initiative was designed to kind of help promote, new technologies on those job sites. And that's what we're doing here. Industry-wide, I think there's a big push towards moving to paperless. It makes sense for everybody. And it's not just Command Alkon, other people in the industry are looking at it too. So it's gaining momentum. Oftentimes it's said that the construction industry is way behind other industries as far as technology, but we're getting there.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I know when I've had the opportunity to attend a couple of your conferences, and I know that, just in speaking with executives from the industry, it seems like one of the most paper intensive aspects of the whole construction supply chain, as you mentioned, is kind of the delivery, tickets. And I think it's great. I mean, sometimes we think about paper and we think about kind of an office environment because that's where a lot of us probably work in. But when you think about a construction site, to your point, I mean, it could be raining, it could be snowing, and there's just a lot of dirt. And when you're dealing with paper, there's so much, important data or information that's captured in those documents. But, poor handwriting, getting smudged with dirt or rain or so forth. I mean, that introduces a lot of, opportunities for error or missed, data and so forth. Right. I mean, it sounds like, that, this movement toward electronic tickets or e-pods it is starting. I mean, who's leading the way here? I mean, what's kind of, where are we today with that?
I would say Iowa DOT has long been considered a thought leader as far as DOTs, which was kind of surprising for me being a Midwesterner myself. I would have thought, California, New York, some of these more populated states would be driving that charge. But Iowa has really kind of taken the lead on that. And other states are looking to Iowa for, guidance on, what's working, what's not working. Some of the earlier pilots they did were more of taking the paper ticket and making it electronic via tablets and signing, taking your proof of delivery e-pod signature on glass rather than a physical signature on paper. And while this steps in the right direction, what we're seeing now is, DOTs want to take that data, not just a PDF image of the data. They want the actual data points to go in and, run trends and see what's happening on the job site and to see that immediately. So, with electronic ticketing, the way we're doing it today, the producer batches a load of material, that information is sent, through the cloud. Somebody on the job site can pull it up on their phone or, tablet and start entering test results, and they can put notes, they can attach pictures to it, videos. I mean, it's just really opened the floodgates as to what can be done and, where we can save people time and money. And, on our previous topic there, just not even the difficulty of working on the job site of, writing information down. And like you said, there's an introduction of error that often happens. But when people take those paper tickets or even a PDF ticket, they have to transpose that information into another system. And most DOTs, have kind of an end game system, if you will, that they're, sending all that data to. Somebody's got to retype all the ticket data that, mind you, was generated electronically to begin with at the producers, and then printed. So they got to retype all that ticket data, and then they've got to capture all those test results that were on the field, as well as the notes. And, every time you rekey something, there's an opportunity there to, miss a key or, transpose a number. There's a lot of introduction of error that happens during that. And so, moving this direction and sending all that information electronically where you're not worrying about the accuracy of somebody who's in, less than perfect working conditions to capture additional information is just, it's been a game changer for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think when I always like to say, digital transformation is such a, a buzz term these days. And there's so many definitions out there. And to me, the first step in digital transformation is really taking a step back and looking around and say, where is the biggest sources of waste in our current processes? And I think you just hit on one of the ones that is probably the biggest one for a lot of companies, and especially there in this part of the construction industry process, which is this manual, a lot of wasted manual time and labor, to manually transcribe all this information back into systems, right? So you got electronic, computer systems at the producers, they're printing stuff out, and then you got to retype it again. So when you think about all the manpower, human power to do this, and then obviously, the potential for introduction of errors or missed data and so forth, I think that kind of builds a very strong business case, for this. I think you also said something that I think is also very important. It's much more than just, having that data. It's also being able to analyze it and be able to look at trends. So this whole area of business intelligence and analytics and machine learning and everything else, that all these other buzz terms, it's really dependent on having all this data and information digitized. And I think by going electronic, it opens up, the opportunity to capture, a much richer set of data and information that then can lead to, more meaningful insights that then can lead to, more proactive and smarter, actions, right?
Yes, yes, it does. And, like I said, I always been long considered the thought leader, but, other states, we're doing a pilot with Alabama right now on some asphalt tickets. And it's important also to realize that it's not just, concrete, but there's asphalt, there's aggregates, there's different material types that are being delivered. So, to be able to capture all those is very, very helpful when you look at the overall portion of these projects and the material volumes that come in there. So, we've done pilots with Iowa, we're working with Alabama, and then there's a whole host of other states that have been, contacting me, asking me about, how do we start, and it's usually with the specification, so when they post those bid notices, the specifications have to point out that, hey, you've got to be willing to use electronic ticketing for this particular project, or some cases, they're contacting producers and saying, hey, would you be willing to test this out before we put it into a spec? So there's a lot of different ways to approach it, but most of them are getting there. And like I said, I've been working with a lot of different states, and we take that feedback and try to, make a better product for everybody. So these initial pilots we're doing have been great learning experiences for us on, what we need to do to make it even better than, what we're proposing. And, of course, anything we're proposing is better than, retyping data in, or in some cases, and this happens on not only the DOT level, but the producer level, and contractors, they take the paper tickets, and there might be somebody there whose full-time job is just to scan all those paper tickets to, turn them electronic. But again, you're not getting any benefit from that. You're just storing a digital copy versus a paper copy in a file cabinet. But when you start sending those individual data points, and you can start comparing and, and doing some analytics on it, you get so much more out of that data, and you can, really, really make your processes more efficient.
Well, it's great to hear that, you've got early adopters, if you will, those that are kind of pushing in the envelope on this, like Iowa and Alabama and the other examples you cited there. Because sometimes that's what it takes, right? It takes, some organizations or companies or supply chains just say, we don't want to be kind of the early adopters. We want to see what others do and maybe see how the value is proven. But I think that's all it takes and it sounds like people really want to learn already from what these early adopters are doing, because they can start seeing, the benefits there. Which is going to lead to my next question. I mean, we already talked a little bit about kind of the efficiency aspect in terms of why it makes sense to move to, e-pods or going electronic. I mean, are there other aspects of the value proposition?
Yeah, I'd say efficiency is probably number one. It seems like every state is doing more work with fewer people. And again, that's, across DOTs, across, contractors, the construction industry in general. But, safety is one of the big drivers. I've talked to a lot of different states, and, if you look at statistics, since 2013, work deaths have been on the rise, which I found very surprising. When I looked into that a little bit more, it's not, cars driving through a highway construction project, hitting workers. It's workers being killed or injured on the job site by equipment that they're, working around every day. So anything we can do to reduce that error and, make sure that we're making it a safe work environment. So if you've got, the ability to pull your phone out from a safe area on a job site, look at that ticket data, start running your tests and entering the test data, versus, hey, here comes a truck, run across, a lane or two of traffic to get to wherever the truck is pulling in to collect that ticket manually from the driver. That is a big driver as well. And, like I said, it's just mind-boggling to me that deaths are increasing rather than decreasing with all the technology available. So that, is one of the biggest, I'd say, efficiency and safety are the two main points that, people are trying to address when they go with e-ticketing processes.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but obviously, I know, again, going to your conference, the importance of safety in this industry, because it is, a high risk environment. Obviously, there's a reason why, this is a hard hat area, right? You see all those signs when you walk around construction sites, and because there is, a lot of risk there. And I think this is, again, I think I hadn't thought about the value proposition extending to the safety side of things, but obviously that's a powerful value proposition there as well. So let's talk about the role of technology now. I mean, what are some of the, key capabilities that companies should look for, as they're looking to, align themselves with these e-construction initiatives with e-pods and so forth?
I would say probably leveraging the tools that they've already got. Like I said, producers have their batching systems that, they've probably had in place for years. They've got cell phones and tablets on the job site they're using for other applications right now. And, using the cloud to send data, obviously critical. But I think finding a solution that works with what everybody's already using. Our particular approach is, and this is a little different, is, we're able to partner with our competitors. So if a producer's got batching equipment that might not be one of our projects or products, we can still get that ticket data and share it to the cloud and, get it down to those tablets and phones on the job site. And, it's making it more efficient, for everybody, but also kind of softens the blow. There's not a lot of time or training invested to get people up and running on this platform. So I think, the capabilities people should look for, or, what, the cost of as far as time and labor, getting, your project partners up online and running and being able to share that data. And with our pilots, we found it's pretty painless for everybody involved. It's a matter of setting up some, access so that, producers choose who they share that data with, and, the DOTs, assign roles for their inspectors or whoever on the site that needs to see that ticket data and enter test results. So I'd say, as an industry, kind of finding those partners that are willing to work with others, maybe outside of their core competencies. So we're working with the trucking industry, we're working with obviously DOTs, we're working with contractors, people that we haven't necessarily always dealt with, but have always been, on the fringe of, those tickets that we've, long been associated with producing on the materials side.
So it sounds like, a key step here is really, number one, taking a look at the current technology capabilities that you have, right? Because I think for any company, whether it's in this area or any other IT area that I've been involved with, I mean, I think one of these rip and replace, if it's a question of rip and replace, it's not going to happen, because companies have already made, significant investments in some of these technologies and capabilities that they have to run their internal operations. But it's more around interoperability, right? How can it's understanding where are the touch points and where are the sources of data that we need, and how do we integrate, and bring those pieces of data and information together onto, let's say, a common platform, right? So whatever platform you're looking at is being able to interoperate with existing systems you may already have, interoperate with mobile devices and technologies that are out there on the workers are using out in the field. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what I'm seeing as well, is kind of that being, one of the key requirements is really this interoperability piece. And obviously you talked about the cloud. I mean, everything these days is about, leveraging the cloud to provide, users wherever they may be with access, permissioned access to the data and information that they have, permission, to see. So it sounds like that kind of high level trend is happening here as well, right?
Yes, it is.
So what challenges then remain in terms of getting broader adoption of ePods? I mean, what will it take to overcome those challenges?
Well, I would say it's just kind of an old school mindset. Like you said, when people think of changing, they think, oh gosh, we're going to have to change everything out that we're already doing, and it's terrible and painful, and nobody wants to do that. So I think people still kind of harbor that thought process. Things aren't as difficult as they used to be. With the technology available and the skills that people have. Like I said, we can work with producers' existing systems. We can work with whatever end use system the DOTs are using. We can take that data and we can take it from the origination point, and we can get it into the DOT's end use system without touching it and without any huge investments in time or software or hardware or anything like that. It's a lot easier and more streamlined process than it ever used to be. So I think as more people see the benefits and they realize, oh gosh, this isn't going to be a 6-month, learning curve, and we're going to have to do everything different. For like the producers, sending electronic ticket data doesn't affect the daily operations of their dispatchers or their drivers. It's the same thing they've always done. It's a little easier for the driver because they don't have to worry about managing those paper tickets. But that data is sent, in the background, set up automatically. They don't have to remember to send the data through. It happens. And I think once people kind of get to realizing more that, hey, this is possible, and not only is it possible, it's a lot easier than I had imagined it would be. So I think, these initial pilots, that have been, run, and you're replacing the paper with a PDF, and, as we evolve, and okay, now we can send the actual data, and you can do some work on that data and figure out where you can save time or money or, improve safety. Those kind of things are what we need to get out there to the industry and make people understand that, this is not going to be a really time intensive and difficult process for them to start sharing that ticket data or to receive that ticket data and start, using it to your benefit to, use it in whatever way is best for you.
Yeah, so it's the classic, change management hurdle. And,
Right.
what I always find interesting is that, across the board, there might be initial resistance to adopting new technology or changing a process or something like that. But then once the users and everybody starts seeing the benefits, if you went back to them and say, you know what, we changed our mind, we're gonna go back to the old way of doing things, they'll probably chop your head off and say, no, we love it. Once they see the benefits, but it's getting over that initial hump. That's always the hardest piece.
Yes, in one of my earlier positions, I was working with producers to install some mobile apps, and it was, basically job analytics. Here's, it was for the contractor in the field, so they could see when their trucks were coming, and what percentage of completion they were done. And one of the producers I worked with had a man that was just really dead set against this. He thought it was, not going to be beneficial. And, I fought hard to win him over. And, finally I ran into him about a year after we went live with that project, and he had retired and had taken a job as a consultant. And as a consultant, he's using the app in the field himself. He's like, man, pulls out his phone, he's showing it to me. He's like, this is the best thing ever. He's like, I really love this. And I'm just thinking, I remember how difficult it was to get you to change your mind in the first place. But, I'm glad to see that he's finally embraced it. And those kind of wins are what I like to see, for the people that were really skeptical or hesitant or just didn't feel like it was going to be a value to them, to see what it's done to their business and how it's improved their processes and how it's streamlined everything so they could do their business better.
That's a great example. And, it reminds me, outside the business world and in the personal space, I remember my in-laws, we all had iPhones and they still had the flip phones. They're like, we don't need a flip phone, this works fine. And then ultimately one of their flip phone broke or something. So they were kind of forced to kind of get a iPhone. Now they can't imagine going back. I think they use it more than my teenage kids use the, the phone. They're constantly on there checking photos and stuff like that. So, when they kind of actually saw the expand the capabilities of what they can do with their phone and taking pictures and so forth. But I think in the business world, that's a great example, right? I mean, I think sometimes you can't really see the value until you actually start using it. And then that in itself becomes, a powerful, testimonial. And obviously, as we've already talked about before, some of these early adopters, whether it's Iowa, Alabama, and so forth, there's already good case studies out there that those that are interested in learning more about this can kind of see some of the benefits that are already being experienced out there. Suzie, we're running short on time here, so I'm just going to go right to my last question. I mean, as a way to wrap up, I mean, what attributes or capabilities will ultimately separate the leaders from the laggards in the construction industry when it comes to, this part of the supply chain?
I think just an openness as much as anything, open to opportunities, open to change. And like I said earlier, we're working with, people that we would have never thought of partnering with in the past, but, our line of business touches so many other lines of business. We got to look at this holistically and not just our little piece of the puzzle, as far as, working with producers. We've expanded, like I said, we're working with DOTs, we're working with contractors, we're working with so many people that, 10 years ago would have probably been unthought of. It's just, but when you look at the overall project and process and what's going on these job sites, I think it's important that, you partner yourself with somebody that's willing to take chances, they're willing to make changes and kind of, shake up the status quo to get things better. And, like you said, the early adopters are critical and, taking that chance and, sometimes the benefits that they see that they relay to us are things that we've never even considered. So there's benefits to these tools that, that are solved, that we didn't even realize was a problem when we first went in. So I think, the companies that will, be the leaders or not even companies, but, any participant on the project supply chain, I think anybody that's willing to, try new things and expand and improve, those are who you want to align yourself with. It's just, it's a new world and we've got to, open our eyes and see what other opportunities or what other impacts we're making across the heavy building materials industry to make sure that we're benefiting everybody and not just our core business groups, if you will. So it's been great, as we kind of see that we're making strides in this.
Yeah, so it sounds like obviously it's kind of always questioning the status quo, right? Is there a better way to do what we're currently doing, and then aligning yourself with partners, because obviously if you're doing it by yourself but your partners aren't, there's limited value there in what you can do, because it truly is, when you think about a supply chain, whether it's the construction supply chain or any other supply chain, you really have to get the buy-in and participation of all the other stakeholders in that process. So it's really aligning yourself with other stakeholders that are like-minded and also willing to question the status quo and move forward. Well, Suzie, as always, we always just manage to scratch the surface on these topics, but you provided some great insights and perspective and advice on what's happening in the world of e-construction and the evolution here. So again, thank you for making the time to be with us today.
I thank you for reaching out and setting this up. It was great talking to you. I'm always willing to talk about making things better.
Great. Well, hopefully we'll have you back on the program maybe in a year's time and see how much progress the industry has made. I'm pretty confident that, based on what I've been hearing and seeing from folks in the industry, that, even though the industry might have been a laggard in the past, the industry is moving quickly to, move up that maturity curve. So I want to thank those of you that joined us. If you're watching this episode on demand, either on the Command Alkon website or on Talking Logistics, and you've got a question or a comment for Suzie, you can post it there, and I'm sure she'll be more than happy to respond via that medium. Again, thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.